Welcome, everyone. Julian's going to kick us off as our host.
Okay, I appoint you as MC.
Thank you so much. Well, you guys, I'm just coming off of a call with Cox Automotive, and I'm so excited about this project we've been working on about a year and a half. Cox Automotive, of course, owns all the Mannheim auctions. They own the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. They did own WSB and a bunch of radio properties, which they recently sold. It's still called Cox Media, though they don't own it. They, of course, have Cox Conserves, which is an incredible sustainability organization funded exclusively by the Cox family, Alex Taylor, and everyone out there. They put a lot of money into this, and they took one of the auction properties they had, which is on the south side of Atlanta. It's as you're going to the airport where 75 and 85 split. If you go 85, that first exit is called Metropolitan Parkway. You've probably never stopped there. It looks like as you look back up towards the city of Atlanta, Metropolitan's just a desert. There's really hardly anything there. It used to be a very robust car dealership strip, and a bunch of other things on the strip, a bunch of adult clubs and things. My family actually owned the auction business on that road that Cox Enterprise bought from our family back in the late 80s, and so I've got a lot of history there because as a boy, I would go there and I sold peanuts at my family's car auction there from about 1971 to 76 until I got my driver's license. And then I started driving the cars there through the auction, and I started a car cleanup shop. So I spent a good deal of time, from age 11 to age 18 there before I went off to college. And I was so excited to see that Cox was turning that auction into an electric mobility facility, essentially to facilitate electric transportation. So if you were to go there today, there's 2,000 parking places, behind the fence, and there's probably 150 Teslas that are sitting there. They have used Teslas. They have the contract to refurbish the used Teslas that are coming off lease before they go back into the retail market as a used car. So if you were buying a used car from Tesla in Atlanta, it's probably sitting on their property down there in storage, being cleaned, being repaired, having the scratches taken out, having a new battery put in or whatever. They told me today there are 400 Amazon vans sitting there, new ones that are being prepared for Amazon. All the cheater diesels from Volkswagen and Audi, the ones that were bought back, they had the contract to do the software, remediation and get those back out on the market. So Cox Automotive, they own Autotrader.com. They own Kelley Blue Book. This is a substantial company. And what we tried to do, oh, by the way, Lyft, the 50 electric bolts with the B that Lyft has in service all sleep there when they're not rented, get cleaned there, get repaired there. They're all there. And if you want to rent a electric bolt for rideshare, you go there to pick it up, 2244 Metropolitan. So in many ways, this is kind of the South Side epicenter for electric vehicles. And I was able to talk Georgia Power into putting an office inside there. And the next step now is to have that staffed with not just a Georgia Power employee, but with volunteers who are within the EV community, like Allie Kelly at the Ray or Ann Blair with the Southern Alliance for the Southern Energy Efficiency Alliance, or any number of other people who come to the meeting that I host there once a month called the EV Brain Trust. Now, we haven't had it there, obviously, because of the virus, but I share all that to say potential really is unlimited for this to become the Southside demonstration facility for fleet vehicles, commercial vehicles. And then Georgia Power has a facility on the north side already on Shallowford Road. That's their customer resource center, kind of in more that commuter epicenter for electric vehicles. So if any of you were interested in officing down there occasionally, I would love to have you consider doing that once the virus leaves us and we start scheduling people to be in the facility. And so it would be a great opportunity for you to rub shoulders with an EV leader, obviously to be there on a Cox Automotive property. I mean, you would just take your laptop, check your email, make your phone calls. I don't even know exactly what you would be doing at this point other than building relationships with other leaders. So anyway, that's a possibility for the future. Do any of you have, I know I want Crystal to kind of give us a report in a second because she was kind of thinking about EV stuff, but besides Crystal, who we're going to hear from in a second, do any of folks on the call have an interest in electric vehicles, and how have you developed that so far?
I do. A lot of my focus at Georgia Tech this past year has been in transportation. With Dr. Brown, who looks like is just about to join the call, I've been working in the Georgia Drawdown Project, or Drawdown Georgia as it is now known, and I've been working within the transportation working group. So a lot of emissions inventory stuff. So I just finished a paper about emissions from MARTA buses and the MARTA fleet, and how transitioning the diesel and CNG buses to battery electric buses affects the emissions upstream, life cycle analysis, all that sort of stuff. So it's something I've definitely been focusing on academically this past year, and something I want to transition into in my career in some capacity.
Caleb, you're familiar with the Greta buses, right? The coach buses that they bring people in on. The last brain trust we had there, MCI brought their fully electric coach for us to see. And I did a video walk around, posted it on Twitter. It would take you days scrolling back through thousands of tweets to find it. So better for me just to send you the video. But Greta is interested in getting these because on the VW diesel settlement, Governor Deal said he wanted all of that money to go towards, Greta electric buses. So we haven't got the first one yet because they're not available, but I think they're coming. And the idea with this pivot facility down there is that because it has 2,000 parking places, because it has 2 Atlanta police officers there 24/7 guarding those Teslas, right? So they got millions and millions of dollars worth of vehicles sitting there, that it would be a great place for MCI or BYD or Proterra or anyone else to keep a demo bus, right? So that a city, say Macon or Savannah or any other city that wanted to see one of these could come up and they could test drive it out of that facility, right? So the same would be the case for a Rivian electric truck or a green power shuttle bus that's made in California. And so, there are people that are interested in getting these electric cars, but where do you go to see it, to drive it, to find out more about it? So, Caleb, I could see, given the direction that you're going, I could see you officing down there some, even if it's just one afternoon a week based on your school schedule,
It would be a wonderful opportunity. I'd love that.
Anybody else have an interest in electric vehicles besides Crystal, who we're going to hear from it in just a second. Yes, go ahead, Sol.
Excuse me.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Julian, did you want to go ahead first? Go ahead.
I was just going to
I'll
suggest.
go after you.
I was just going to suggest that since Dr. Brown is now on, everybody could introduce themselves quickly.
Sure.
We have a couple new people here.
Yeah, go ahead. Start with Becky, and we'll just assume no one knows Dr. Brown. Just Becky, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, Dr. Brown. I'm Becky Rafter, and I attend your MSIM program.
Caleb?
Nice to see you.
Caleb, you're muted.
My bad. Gotta watch that. I'm also Masters of Sustainable Energy and Environmental Management.
Sol?
Hi, I'm Saul Haroon. I'm part of the MBA program at the Scheller College of Business at Georgia Tech, and doing a fellowship in the Ray C. Anderson Sustainability Center right now as well. Prior to that, I did my master's in sustainable architecture at Georgia Tech as well. So yay, double jackets. So, right. I guess it's like Hotel California or Hotel Georgia. You can check out, but you can never leave, I suppose. And I do also part as a consulting instructor teach at Georgia Tech on advanced photovoltaics, renewable energy. So I've taught a lot of the NAPSET folks from Radiance and Sol America and Hannah Solar before what happened to them, of course, all throughout the city as well. So, but yeah, I've been involved in electric vehicles for a long time too, part of the EV Club with Chris Gamble, whom you know. And I owned some of the original EVs, one of the first RAV4 EVs, Toyota RAV4's 2003 model, as well as the Selectrias. You may remember the Selectrias, one of the original EVs. And then I worked with Clark Howard on his plug-in Prius and his solar plant at his house with Radiance Solar. So being involved in kind of see the synergy between solar, electric vehicles, and microgrids, which is my area of specialty. So I worked with Altamaha Power near Dublin, Georgia. I guess it's pronounced a little bit differently here, but on one of their first microgrids a few years ago, where they put car charging stations, and that was a collaboration with Radiance Solar. So sorry for taking too much of everybody's time, but I'm grateful for being here. Thank you. Thank you all.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Crystal?
Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Brown. I from GGC, environmental science major and ecology focus, and I helped do the Solve Climate by 2030 webinar that kind of got the email started. That kind of got this started, I guess.
Yeah.
Great. Ben?
Hey, Marilyn, how are you? Sorry, I can't get my video to work, but I'm here. No, it's good to be on this and good to talk to everyone. I don't even know, Commissioner, if you know this or not, but I'm now with Bank of America and their energy financing group, and working with local, state, and governments as well as private sector on helping to bridge financing for large energy retrofit projects.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's recent. It's exciting. A lot going on.
Yeah, I just had a Freedom of Information request from a reporter in Alabama wanting to see any conversation that I had with any banking entity.
Oh, no.
And Bank of America is one that I had, Julian in New York was one that I had conversation with. So I had to submit my emails. Of course, there wasn't anything.
Sure.
It was just for a meeting that I was doing with his utility group up in New York. So, Dr. Brown and Ben and Sol, what this group has kind of become at Julian's leadership really is an opportunity just to have a small group of people, a single screen of people, be able to share some of their sustainability ideas, and to have the rest of us on the call be able to chime in on that, give ideas and suggestions. And so we had 4 on our last call last week who shared ideas, and today we'll get an update from those as well as a few more ideas. And then if we have time, we'll have some of our experts kind of share some of the ideas that they're working on, and we'll save our experts for the end of the call. So Dr. Brown, sure, it's good to have you on because all this came out of your event.
Power dialogue. Yeah. So glad you were able to participate in that. We've gotten a lot of views of that video. Lots of,
Yeah.
it's generated a lot of buzz.
Yeah, that's great. Well, why don't we start with Crystal, who had an idea last week about electric vehicle car sharing, and she goes to Georgia Gwinnett, and they have some chargers there, and we gave her a number of ideas. So, Crystal, give us an update just on your thinking about this after kind of processing what was said on the call.
Okay. Yeah. So I reached out. I reached out to my mentor, who's on the sustainability committee, and I also reached out to the Dr. James Nolan that you had mentioned on the call last week. I have not received any responses as of yet, but I hadn't received a response from her prior to that email either, which is kind of weird. So I'm a little concerned by not hearing back from her. I don't know. They may be really, really busy too, because we're in our last week and like next week is finals. So I'll sit there and wait. But I mentioned in the email, kind of what we were doing, kind of doing this focus group brainstorming, want to help students, be a part of, contributing to sustainability in their communities a little bit more. And the idea that we had talked about with bringing perhaps like some sort of EV campus rideshare in a sense. And I kind of went even a little further with it too, suggesting some different ideas, like you had said, with just the signing one out, if you need to go somewhere. But then I was thinking it might, I don't know if this can be done, but it seems like it might be able to, if it went a little bit further and actually like maybe put them in, like incorporated it into the dorms, like say every dorm had one maybe like in their parking lot and used it as a rideshare. I mentioned the Zip car. It'd be cool if we had like an app and like that could be a part of actually, I feel like the students who come there and are living there don't necessarily all of them have cars, and this would be easy to keep the car on campus and it still be like a campus fleet type thing, and they can just like reserve it as needed. But that's just one of my little ideas I kind of went off with. Sticking to the original thing that with both of them, I just kind of like threw the ideas out there and asked them, hey, are you willing, if I can get some cars donated, are you willing to work with me or a group of students to maybe try and put together this program for our campus? And if it does really well, maybe use it like a pilot program. If it does really well, then maybe other campuses in Georgia will do it. So I'm waiting. I'm really excited to see like what they say back. I don't know why they haven't responded yet. Usually they're quite quick.
To the new folks on the call, Ben, Dr. Brown, so one of the things that we talked about last week was you've got the whole Zip car concept, right? Where you have a subscription, they already have your insurance stuff on file. The university wouldn't necessarily own those cars. They would maybe be owned by Zipcar. That would be one possible idea, and that you just require as a part of the contract that 25% of the cars be electric, right? So because you want to have electric out there, you kind of require that. The other thing would be like, as if Dr. Brown has to go somewhere on tech business, she probably can go over to the fleet department and check out a car, right? Do you have that availability, Dr. Brown?
I've never done it since I have a few cars, but yeah.
Yeah, so UGA has 20 cars, vans, like if the students are going camping or going, on a rock climbing expedition, they check out a van. So one of the ideas was that get these cars donated to the university, and then they would run it as a part of their fleet department. But in this, make it available to students who were pre-approved on the insurance.
Does the state of Georgia have a fleet goal for EVs? I know the federal government does.
No, the state of Georgia's.
And the state of Tennessee does.
Georgia only has 3 EVs on their procurement list: the Kia Soul, fully electric, the Kia Niro plug-in hybrid, and the Kia Niro fully electric. You can't you can't buy a Nissan Leaf on a state contract. Not allowed. So
Do you know what? Do you know why that is? Why are they not allowing certain cars to be bought? Or is it just one of those policies that just never was changed?
you know, it's there really hasn't been enough demand, I would say. I mean, I was down at EPD. All right, here I am down in EPD by the airport talking to their fleet manager. And he says, I don't think I want any of those electric vehicles. I'm thinking, wait a second, you're EPD. If there's any state agency that can have an electric vehicle, it should be EPD. I started asking for an EV when I got to the commission in 2011. Not an EV. There wasn't one available. I was asking for a natural gas car. No, none of the list, can't have it, can't lease it from Enterprise. You know, it was just no. And finally, this last year, I was invited to speak to all the procurement officers at their Jekyll Island convention and make the case for an EV. So I went down there and basically compared the state charger in our fleet, from an operational and fuel cost compared to an EV. And there were a couple people that came up to me afterwards, but the main thing they said is, sorry, even if we wanted one, we couldn't buy it because it's not approved. And so getting them to approve it is, it's just been.
They're not taking a life cycle view of the cost of ownership of a car. They're taking the first cost, right? You can't buy a car for more than $20,000 or something. Yeah.
And they probably also want to, am I on mute? Oh, yeah, no. They probably also want to just support the Kia plant, which is, there's really so many options out of Kia, and they don't want to support the Nissan plant over in Mississippi, so they want to keep it local, probably.
Hey, if we had a fleet full of Kia Niro electric cars, I would be happy. I would be jumping up and down. But no, so far, not happening. Okay, Crystal, why don't you keep working on that, and maybe I'll send a note to Dr. Nolan, letting him know you're trying to reach him, and let's see what becomes of that. Crystal, I would love for you to be able to see the lift operation that they've got going down there once it opens back up with the electric Chevrolet Bolts, and how they're renting them, and maybe you could just kind of talk with the lift personnel. And I think it would be a vision building thing for you, just to kind of hear how this is working, because it is, not every city in the U.S. has a fleet of electric vehicles being used for rideshare. In fact, most don't. Portland has it, Denver, Atlanta, but there's not very many.
Okay.
Do you remember, Tim, that there was an initiative to try to put together a pool of EVs that might be made available to low-income residents in Atlanta? It was an initiative of the Southern Company, Bruce, I've forgotten his, Eckerd or something like that. Maybe you know.
Edelston, Bruce Edelston.
Edelston, yes, that's right.
Yeah, so he's left the Southern Company.
Right.
He's doing some consulting.
Right. Did that ever go anywhere? I know insurance was an issue. Individuals without insurance couldn't borrow one from the pool, the idea was. And so that made it maybe intractable for many. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the vision died when he left on that. However, there is a Hispanic community center in Portland that has EVs that they loan to members. That the nonprofit Forth, F-O-R-T-H. So you can just Google Forth Hispanic Community Center EV and you'll get it. And then in LA, they had one of their nonprofits doing some different type of EV car sharing. In Atlanta here, and we had John Lewis. Crystal, was John Lewis on our call last time, or did I just give you his name? That runs the organization helping single moms get a car.
Yeah, no, yeah, you gave me his name and an email.
Okay. So we had him at our brain trust presenting, and he basically gets cars donated and has garages do the repair and basically gets them back in, certified condition. And then he donates that car
Mm.
to a women's shelter or to a crisis center, or
Mhm.
and so he's done Priuses and things like that, but he wants to do some electric cars. And so he's a willing partner, Crystal, that probably is worth you meeting with and having a phone call with, because he's already in the business of remediating these used cars and giving them away. And he's a nonprofit, and he's already got that structure taken care of. So that might be a good possibility for you.
I might be able to dig up Bruce Edelston's email address for you too, Crystal, because he's put a lot of thought into this type of initiative and would probably be quite pleased to talk with you.
Have some pointers.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, good. Does anyone else on the call have a comment for Crystal here? Just ideas for her to pursue?
And Tim, you brought this up, and maybe Crystal, you already know this, but you mentioned the City of Atlanta's EV program, but they did outsource it, right? It's a third-party run program. Cars are not owned by the city, but they did and I can't remember the name of who and maybe someone knows who their third party is, but the cars in their fleet are owned by a third party, managed by a third party. So it could be a model to look at.
Yeah, that's right. They used that third party because the third party was a for-profit company and could take advantage of the tax credit.
That's correct.
The state, the city didn't qualify because, of course, they don't pay taxes. Cities don't. And so using the leasing company was a great way to do that. And the city had taken Georgia Power's Will It Work device. Maybe one of you know what the brains behind that thing is, but it's some kind of GPS algorithm thingy-majig that will tell the city, based on all the cars that they put it in, this car is a good candidate to be electrified. This truck is not a good candidate to be electrified, because the whole idea is that if people are going to go to the trouble to move that particular vehicle to an electric, you want it to work, right? You want the employee to be happy. You don't want them complaining that the thing's running out of juice all the time. So this third party, and Stephanie Stuckey was the resiliency officer at the city. I'll send her a text real quick and just ask her the name of it, so I'll have it by the end of the call. So anybody else with a suggestion for Crystal? All right. Julian, we were going to talk a little bit about recycling, repurposing. I think you had a video you wanted us to watch, and just to have a little short conversation about recycling. Did you want to do that today or another day?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I've been in electronics recycling for 25 years now, and for a long time I've known that we'd be the ones with the tool set to handle solar panels when it came time to actually retire them. And actually I did that myself. That's how I built my first solar power system, with some salvaged panels from South Face Energy Institute. They were damaged and they still worked, and went off the grid in 2005. Anyhow, that's fine for a few panels here and there, but what about the large scale? And with the Public Service Commission is starting to look at end of life disposal of panels and lithium-ion batteries, etc., to anticipate decommissioning of these new facilities that they're authorizing. And that's great, and I'm going to get involved in some way with the PSC. So I made some phone calls on Friday to other recyclers, large and small, to see kind of what was going on in the industry. Were they thinking about it? And we actually have a small recycler in Marietta I go back with one of the co-owners about 20 years, very, very good business relationship. And he shared with me a little video that I'd like to share with you. In just a second. As they say in the doctor's office, this will only hurt for a second. One more second. I just want to give credit to who shared that video. Leave that up just for a second. This is actually about a 5-year-old company, but as I said, I go back with one of the owners many years. A very trusted player in the market. So anyway, why was that solar panel being shredded? They couldn't tell me much at all about this, other than the fact that it was about a 3-foot by 5-foot panel, so relatively new. And they had a whole semi-truck load that they needed to recycle, and they had to destroy them. That's something that we unfortunately have to deal with in the electronics recycling business, is sometimes good things like hard drives have to be destroyed. And I've been scratching my head over why they would have had to do this. And what I suspect is that they were probably panels that were leased or donated by a manufacturer. He did say they were from a farm. So my suspicion would be that maybe they had defects in this particular panel and they did not want them to get back on the aftermarket. That's the only explanation I can come up with for why they had to destroy them. So anyway, recycling solar panels is really complicated because there's so many different chemistries involved. Some contain cadmium and some don't. You can't shred the ones that have cadmium because it's highly toxic, and that would create a really dangerous environment for workers. Those did not have cadmium. They all went through the shredder. That actually is an 80 horsepower shredder up in Marietta, which is relatively small in our business. They just did a test run to make sure it would go through, and there's no issue with that. You could put a whole copying machine in there, it'll eat it up. And then once they knew that it would work fine, they outsourced the actual shredding and shipped the truckload off to their downstream processor to get it done. The only material that was salvageable was aluminum frames. Once it's shredded, you can separate out the aluminum. It's contaminated with glass, so it's a very low value commodity, but it did provide a little bit of a return. And luckily, Novus knew to charge up front to take these materials. Anything questionable, we charge up front. And if they were to do it again in the future, they would charge at least 25 cents a pound to dispose of them, which is about the same rate as same cost as we have for disposing of cathode ray tubes, which is one of our most problematic materials. Another thing real quickly, this is how Commissioner Echols and I kind of launched our conversation a couple of weeks ago. He was concerned about decommissioning grid scale storage plants. So we talked a bit about recycling of lithium-ion batteries, which are actually quite a valuable commodity. Depending on the market, they're up to $2 a pound. They're probably about zero right now. But we talked about the example of a battery pack from an EV, where you've actually got about 30 individual battery packs that make up the whole system. And they're all wired in series. So typically when your EV battery pack fails, it was just one or two of the actual modules that went out. So there's kind of an aftermarket and a cottage industry for dealing with those materials. You could take a battery pack and refurbish it, isolate the bad modules, replace them, and resell it on the market as a refurbished battery pack. Or you could just tear it down and sell all the individual packs. And these 7-volt packs typically sell for about $30 on eBay. And for solar hobbyists like me and Sol too, it can be a pretty neat way to get access to some really good batteries without having to lay out a lot of cash. And once all the modules are separated, cooling becomes less of an issue. You can just rack them so that you can get natural convection cooling, and unlike the complicated cooling systems the EV battery packs use, you don't need all those fans and vents and et cetera. So Commissioner, does that cover recycling enough for you?
Yeah, the video is troubling to me for a couple reasons. One, if you think about what's going on with the coal ash stuff right now, they're unlike the nuclear power plants. There was no decommissioning fund set aside. You know, the power company has money in the bank to decommission Plant Hatch and Plant Vogtle. It was required. We didn't require that on coal. We're not requiring that on solar. And unless we do something, we're not going to require it on batteries. And I think we should learn the lesson from the coal ash here, in the sense that here's the decision being made now, after the fact, on how to handle this, the money being collected after the fact from the ratepayers, billions, and it's less than ideal. And seeing the solar panels shredded, I mean, the aluminum cladding was going through there, right? I mean, why not pull the cladding off before it goes through the shredder?
It's bonded on really tightly. I don't know if it's glued or what the process is, but it was simply more cost effective to separate it with a shredder.
Commissioner Echols, you're probably familiar with the model solar ordinance that Georgia Tech developed over the past couple of years, which was intended to try to convince individual municipal governments to pass an ordinance that would require putting aside revenues for the afterlife disposition of solar systems. But no one in Georgia has adopted it. So we don't quite know where to go from here. I have studied it, used it in class, and thought it was looked really good. It had been benchmarked against others elsewhere in other states. Yeah, something like that would be helpful. It doesn't necessarily tackle the solar farms issue, or I don't think it dealt with batteries, lithium-ion batteries. But for rooftop it did.
Well, it's important to note that even in this case where there was no cadmium, it was still a cost to dispose of them. And if that panel had been 20 years old and degraded, and by that time old technology, you're still going to have to manage the materials, and you still want to extract whatever you can.
Mm-hmm. But there may be a role for a state agency, such as a commission, to suggest that municipal governments consider these, setting aside a fund, unless you wanted to do it at the state level, which sounds like quite an undertaking. What's your grand scheme on that?
You know, I really think, and I went to NREL a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and we talked about this very topic. I came back, raised the issue, discovering that there was only one solar panel manufacturer that was willing to take them back, but you had to pay the shipping. So there was one manufacturer that says, you load them up in a semi, bring them back to us, and recycle them. Of course, I mean, you've still got to have the labor go out there, stack them up, put them in a trailer,
yeah,
ship them all the way back up with the diesel, the transportation. I don't know what that would cost per mile. But it was only one of the many companies that were out there. And, you know, I talked to James Marlowe at Radiance and a bunch of other folks about the issue, and should we change the wording in the PPAs and require. So this is not anything new for me, but it has not been something I've been able to accomplish yet. that video may help me actually, because what I want my colleagues to see is that this is the future, right? Unless we come up with something, because I bet we have 25 million solar panels in the state of Georgia now. We have a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's only going to get more. And if we don't stand up some kind of, decommissioning or recycling protocol that requires it,
Yeah.
I think they could wind up being landfilled. Because for someone in Bainbridge, Georgia, they may not want to ship them up to Marietta and have them shredded. Of course, that kind of shredder you could probably take, on site at Bainbridge and just shred them right there on site. But that's a horrible end of life. Becky, let me get you to chime in. I mean, you've been involved in this. I mean, now I'd like to hear each of your reactions and kind of where you think we need to go in the future on this. What were your thoughts, Becky, in seeing that?
Well, I am learning about the hardware, I guess the decommissioning of the hardware of these things more and more. Even I'm just learning what e-waste is, to be perfectly honest. Don't judge me. And when I saw that video and Julian showed it to me a couple of days ago, I was pretty appalled. And I guess I hadn't realized that, yeah, we are going to be creating this massive amount of chemical waste, but also, they're only usable for so long. Like, they run out of life, just like all of their fuels. And so I wonder how sustainable solar energy is in the long run when it is, at this point in the technologically speaking, it is so cumbersome. It has a lot of weight, has a lot of chemicals, and yeah, I don't know enough about the technology to know like where it could go and how that could be more sustainable in the long run. But
we talked about pyrolysis last week with Cox Enterprises pyrolysis facility in Brantley County, and how their focus on doing pyrolysis on those tires is different than what everybody else is doing. And so you're talking about, to me, Cox Conserves is, the gold standard, because not only are they doing the right thing, they're not bragging about it. I mean, they're doing it because they really believe it's the right thing to do. Maybe we need to have Cox Enterprise in our remaining box here, Julian. Yep. We need to have somebody with Cox Conserves on here, because if they're committed to doing that with tires, and then at their auction over there on Campbellton, they're taking the wastewater out of the car cleanup shop, and they are using, they're using those, I don't know what those organisms are called that eat, in wastewater process.
Algae.
Yeah, so they're doing that with the water. Maybe they can tell us, the best way forward on this, because they own a lot of solar fields.
But that problem with car tires is how old? How many? It's taken a half a century to find a way to dispose of rubber tires, and still I'm not sure we've got the answer. Hopefully we won't spend that kind of time frame on our solar panels.
Saul just sent me a text that he wants to weigh in.
Hey there, guys. So I used to work for Suniva, which was a darling of solar before, whatever happened to it, which we don't need to get into right now here in Norcross. And so we looked into recycling now in terms of toxic materials. So obviously I wouldn't say there's really much per se. There's silver, the lead-free solder was being used. There's aluminum framing, there's glass, and it's a tight epoxy of some sort around the periphery. The aluminum frame comes apart, but it requires labor. So it's not that bad, but it does require somebody, or maybe a machine, an automated machine, to simply access the panel where it's joined. And I've got some panels in my kitchen right here. I run my house in solar as well, of course. And then the glass can be removed, and there's a resin, there's an epoxy or a backsheet as well. Then, of course, the main part is silicon with silver soldering and the like, or silver connector points. So we could be set up, but nobody really bothered doing it because, and certainly at Suniva, we never really found a cost-effective way of doing it because it was just gangbusters, just install more and more solar. And in terms of the lifespan, it's 80% production after 20, 25 years. So I would say silicon-based solar is indeed sustainable. I don't consider it a toxic waste. And even after 20, 25 years, it's still producing 80% of the power, much like batteries, which are rated to 80% after 10 years, lithium batteries and the like. So we just need to move ahead in coordinating massive recycling facilities. And I think it's more of the technology, I think, is there to do it. It's more of a political will as well as perhaps an economic equation that are people going to get paid for doing it? And can we set up the machines to rip apart the aluminum, take apart the glass, and then you've just got the silicon, which can be handled separately. So I really think it can be done, but just, for a variety of reasons, it isn't right now. But again, as I said, I don't consider toxic materials for being most of the modules. And Commissioner Echols, I did a quick math. We have around 2 gigawatts of solar installed here in Georgia now. So that translates into roughly around between 5 to 6 million modules, around 300 to 350 watts each. So you're right, there is a lot of modules there that could be handled, that could be taken care of. But we are growing thanks to, in part, to your leadership, Commissioner Echols, in becoming one of the fastest states for growing solar. I myself am working on a lot of solar power plants, microgrids and the like, with Georgia Power and Duke in the Carolinas. So yeah, just can we coordinate an effort collectively to make this cost effective, to have the machines, the automated machines that take apart the aluminum, take apart the glass, and then leaving the silicon backing. And then, yeah, absolutely can be done. So I leave it all to all of you, I guess, Ken. I mean, we've got the technology. Is it cost effective? I don't know at this point.
Commissioner, your example of panels being retired in South Georgia, if they were no longer worth using to anybody, who knows what kind of solar technology we'll have 20 years from now, those could have just been landfilled. The tempered glass, that's what ended up happening with those panels. There's nothing toxic in it, so they got the glass got landfilled. And salvaging the aluminum was just a way to offset the cost of disposal in that case. It's like, we've got to get a few pennies a pound out of this somewhere. And that's the kind of margins that recycling companies operate on.
I mean, if we're throwing glass in the landfill, and that's bad, I mean, it seems like throwing an entire solar panel in there, it is atrocious, especially in that it has, one, the ability to provide shade over something, parking lots, whatever, and that it still has 70%, 60% of its life left. And, that even if you moved it out of Mr. Jones's field because he wanted to plant trees there now, or he was going to put new panels, I mean, is there a nonprofit? Is there an organization that could basically replant those solar panels in another location for a secondary purpose, that there be some value proposition associated with it? I mean, it seems like there is value to shade, and those panels are easily racked. They're designed to be racked.
Adaptive reuse, and they're hail-proof, so yeah, build buildings out of them. Or,
well, and the whole concept,
agricultural buildings.
I was going to say the whole concept of cleanup for any energy generation is not sexy, and just like coal ash or nuclear or even when, people are talking about the end of life for solar. Like, it's not sexy, but when you talk about recycling and reuse, that's very hot, and it probably will be for a while. And so some of it is also like not just rebranding, because that's not fully transparent, but just like, how, like you were saying, like how to make sure that we're able to use these discarded fuels and other, for like nuclear, it'd be lots of other related pieces, but how to make cleanup something that is sexy when it's not, and so that those industries can get funded more, and that the technology and R&D investment can be increased as well.
I have a question for Julian about this waste. I keep reading about torrefaction, particularly in the biomass field, but the champions of that say they could take anything and heat it at high pressure and put it to good use, encapsulate it, and you'll never be bothered by it again. Aren't there some possibilities like that?
Torrefaction.
Yeah. Maybe that's for another day. We'll talk about that.
Okay. Well, another real quick point for you, Commissioner, is that those retired panels, if they had absolutely no other use, if they were cadmium bearing, they would need to be handled correctly. Over 220 pounds a month, and it's hazardous waste.
Let's make this just a group assignment. Go learn things about solar recycling. On our next call, we'll just get a report. So let's move now to maybe another person on the call. Becky, I don't think we had a chance to hear from you last time about, ideas that you had. Do you want to kind of share with us some of the things that you're thinking about that we can kind of brainstorm together?
Sure. Several thoughts, several different topics, so anything is of interest. One of them is hydrogen fuel cell technology. Another is thinking about how to scale up some of the energy efficiency programs to include more equipment and appliances in the home, but also for more people. And we've touched on that briefly during the last call, but how to marry energy efficiency more with demand response and increase that. And then, just to have a conversation at some point about some of the nuclear harm reduction ideas that we've come up with, as far as ways to get more people involved in looking at the, sort of on the cleanup side, but also some of the ways to build out transparency around, when people might want to shelter in place, or when people, might want to take, like what we found in our research is that some of the tritium in the air happens at different times of the year, and it's worse in the winter. It's worse in the summer, it's worse when it's hot, it's worse when it's stormy, and just things like that to help build awareness for folks, or when it's the most dangerous in the environment. So those are the three topics that I think I'm most interested in right now.
Why don't we talk about this first one that you had, the energy efficiency? Let's just throw that out on the table today and have some discussion. Go ahead and give us a little more of the bones on that.
Sure. So in my class with Dr. Brown this semester, energy technology and policy, I've worked with a group of students, and we focused on demand response and energy efficiency for the entire semester. And so through that, I was able to sort of delve into Georgia Power's demand response program, and was able to kind of get a sense of what they're doing in comparison to what is sort of a national average. And especially with how many single family homes are in Georgia or in the South in general. And it just seemed like there's a lot of money on the table, being left on the table, as far as, not working at efficient levels, as far as, producer surplus and consumer surplus, and what might be available to help the utility in regards to demand response. Demand savings, but also help the consumer with lowered electricity bills, and then the lower need for electricity. A lot of it is just information, but a lot of it is also accessibility and probably culture around, like, who has, like, a fancy Energy Star washer and dryer. Some people don't even have them in their homes at all. So I'm going to be doing a project over the summer in Albany, Georgia, looking at the success that they've had as a smart city, one of Georgia's smart cities, one of their Georgia's maybe first smart cities, I'm not sure, but looking at the success rate that they've had around energy conservation in regards to their housing programs for low and middle income households. And of course, they've had some energy savings spillover effects, but I want to be looking specifically at the energy efficiency programs over time that they've had, and to kind of find out what the success factors are based on some hypotheses that I and my colleague are following.
You know, the prepay program with 82,000 people on it now has been fascinating to me in that these people with information about their consumption naturally reduced it. And there have been some that have said, well, they're poor people and they just can't afford. I don't think that's it, because I have reduced my own consumption with knowledge, and this knowledge of what I'm using, and that comes because I drive an electric car, right? And I'm, maybe I was on time of use rate at the other house. I'm not on it at this particular house because of Jackson's time of use is not attractive. But this, Becky, I don't know if you would have an opportunity in your course of study to factor in or do a study on 100 prepay customers or 400 prepay customers and be able to to see what is it that's motivated these people to save this money. Or maybe we can even tee it up with Georgia Power, because they're obviously concerned about privacy of the information, but maybe we could convince them, because they are communicating with these people every day, either through email or text. So maybe you could write some questions that they would twice a year ask this population about if they like it. How would they rate it on a scale to 1 to 10? I don't think they're doing any of this, and this program is having an energy efficiency, a positive outcome, and I don't think we ever intended it to be that. I think our company's perspective is this is a way for us to handle low-income people who aren't paying their bills, and help people to not have to have a deposit anymore. It's turned out to be is that we've created a lot of smarter energy consumers. I don't know what.
I think that's a fascinating idea, to have questions maybe added to the communication between utility and the customer. And I'd love to see maybe what I'm able to find out over the next couple of months. It's a short project. What I'm able to find out over the next couple of months, because I will be hosting focus groups and in addition to doing, analysis with very large data sets, doing qualitative analysis with focus groups, one-on-one interviews, and a phone survey, because of course we can't go down to Albany right now. And I think maybe from that, I can get a sense. I might even be able to get some information about the prepaid program, because this is the municipality, Albany's municipal utility. It's not Georgia Power, but I could get a sense of, what is interesting to these customers around their energy savings that might be able to relate to what's happening with the prepaid program, that could inform questions that I could share with Georgia Power. I think that's a really good suggestion. I can't hear you, Dr. Brown. You're on mute.
My understanding is that on the prepaid program, there's quite a stream of text messaging information flowing to customers. And you could have that same impact. If that's the principal causal mechanism, then you could have the same impact independent of the prepaid program. So even if there isn't any, you could take the messaging from the prepaid program and apply it as an experiment to the customers in Albany and just see, is it the rate design or is it the messaging? That'd be a nice experiment.
That's great. Yeah, definitely. Very good.
So I'm so glad you're doing the efficiency and demand response focus for this summer. I look forward to talking with you tomorrow about that.
Yes, me too. Thank you. Y'all, I'm so sorry. I have to hop off because I have a very important 3 o'clock call that I need to be on. And Caleb also had to jump for that. Could we pick this conversation up at the next time together?
Yeah, we'll end our call now because we're losing our folks. So we do want to keep it to an hour. So Julia will communicate a new date, and we got some homework to do on solar, and then let's put additional thought to Becky's idea and Dr. Brown's suggestion about how to do this experiment. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and thanks for being on the call. Thank you, Julian, for organizing.
Thank you, Commissioner Echols. Thank you, Julian.
As with the last week,
I'll
send a link to the video, the Zoom cloud recording of this to everybody.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, you guys.
Bye.